In this video, we're going to work on allowing our player to have a hotbar at the bottom of the screen that shows the inventory that we're holding. We're going to allow selection of certain items in the hotbar by a hotkey and allow our player to actually heal himself with the potion. We're also going to make some quick updates to our item pickup so that we can actually see the item when we're building it in the editor. Because right now we're getting an empty circle here and we don't really get to see what our potion looks like in the scene until we're actually running it. So let's go into our item pickup script and we're going to do something that we haven't done yet. We're going to create a tool script out of this. And what a tool script can do is it runs both in the game and in our editor. So this is going to help us see real-time changes in our editor rather than needing to run them in game. Okay, so we're going to make a couple changes to our item variable. And we're going to make this a setter. So we're going to do new item on the set, and item will equal our new item. And then we're only going to update the sprite if we're in the editor. So we're going to check on if the engine is editor hint and is node ready. We're going to update our sprite, which is a method that we will create right after this. And if we're in the editor, this returns true. So that's what this is checking for. So let's create this. Well, actually, we can create this right here. Function, call this update sprite. I'm not going to return anything. And all we're going to do is if we have an item and item.get on the icon. So if we have an icon and we have a sprite, we're going to update the sprite's texture to equal the item's icon. So inside of our ready method, we want to do this update sprite here inside of our ready, but then we only want to do our game logic when we're outside of the editor. So if we are not in the engine is editor hint, so if we're not in the editor, then we will indent all this stuff to be inside of this if block. And now we should be able to go to 2D onto our test level. And there we go. We see it right now. So now we're able to get a more clear picture of where we're placing our items. I think it's just a better view for us to have right now. And all it doesn't affect anything in game. So we can go back in and play this and we will be able to pick up our potion. And now we're going to make a change to our item. So this is our base item script. And what I want to do instead is I want to have an export range on the variable of heal amount, which is something that we previously had in our item config. I want to make this an integer, and we're going to default it to 0. And in the export range, we're going to have this between 0 and 100. So then we can go back into our item configs. And for right now, we're just going to get rid of heal amount. Since we don't need that, we're going to set that individually on each item that we're putting down. Back in the item script, we do need to create a use method for our character to actually use an item. So let's create use. This is just going to return a bool. And we're just going to match our item type. And if the item type is a consumable, and if we have a heal amount that is greater than 0, we will return character.heal. And we will give it a heal amount. And heal is a method that we're going to be adding to our character, which we will get to in a little bit. But let's just wrap this up for right now. And then if we are going to match on an item type, a weapon, for right now, we're just going to pass. We're not going to use anything of that, but we're just going to account for that option. And then we will return false afterwards. So in order to get rid of this error, let's go into our character. And all the way at the bottom, let's just create this method for heal. We're going to take in an amount, which will be an integer, and we are going to return a bool. And all we're going to do here is if our current health is greater than or equal to our max health, we return false since we don't want to heal if we're over our max health already. And then we're going to do our current health. It's going to be equal to the smaller value between our current health plus the amount or our max health. So this is just going to ensure that we never actually go over our max health. And then we need to update our health bar. So the health bar value is going to equal our current health. And then if we ever reach here, we will be returning true. Okay, so that will get rid of this error for us now. Okay, yeah, we can't actually call this on the class. We need to call it on our character, and we will pass in our character like this. Now we will be able to heal properly. All right, now we can actually go in and start creating the inventory slots, which are going to be the squares at the bottom of the screen that are going to actually hold our items. So let's create a new node, and it's going to be of the type texture rect. Let's just call this our inventory slot. And let's save this. Let's create, okay, we have an inventory folder, so let's save that in there. And we're also going to create a script on this. So let's just create that and save it and have it attached. Over here, we can give it a class name of inventory slot. But let's focus on the scene for right now. So we're going to be using a tile map that I will link in the description. It's just going to be this tilemap.png. We're going to look for the Atlas texture, and we're going to edit the region. So let's drag this in. We're going to edit the region, and I'm going to use this right here is going to be our base item inventory slot. And then this one is going to be what it looks like if your item slot is selected. So there's some variance so you know that you're actually selecting something. But let's choose this. The custom minimum size will be 16 by 16. And we are going to need a label, which we're just going to call our slot number. So I'm just going to default this to 1 just so we can see it. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And I'm going to give this a theme overrides on our font. I'm also going to link the font that I'm using in the description. We can quick load this, and I'm using a font called Bitpotion. I'm going to override the font size. We're going to make this a 6. So it looks a little bit small here, but we can always adjust it if it looks a little bit wonky in the game. We can bring this down a little bit, and I'm going to place this up in the top left, and I'm also going to give this a font color. I'm going to have this be sort of like a dark gray. Yeah, ignore that for right now. When we actually see what this looks like in our scene, see if we can even test scene this. There you go. You can kind of see what it looks like. That's just going to be the indication of what hotkey you need to press in order to select that slot. We're also going to need another texture rect here. And this is going to be our item icon. And I don't want the item icon, which would be in our case a potion, to be the entire size of this. I want it to fit inside of this darker brown square. So I'm going to hold Alt while I'm going in this way, and I'm going to select it to be, looks like 1 pixel or so inside of this dark brown, because I never want our health potion to spill over. I think that will just look a little messy, and you know, that's how I'm going to do it. If you want it to be bigger, by all means. And we want the expand mode or the stretch mode to be keep aspect in the center. We're going to add one more label, and this is going to be our quantity label. So we'll put 5 for right now. We're also going to do some theme overrides here. I'm going to use the same font that we are using for, we're going to call it the Bitpotion. We're going to change the font size here to be 8. I want this to be bigger than our actual hotkey number. And in our layouts, I want to anchor this to the bottom right. I need to change the size here a little bit though. Let's go down to the bottom right. I'm going to bring it up a little bit though. So now when we look in this, this is what it's going to look like. This is going to be, this looks really big right now. So if we need to come back and adjust this, that's fine. I think I actually want to increase the font size. I'm going to make it actually 12. And let's see. Let me run this local scene and see. That looks a little messy. Let's just do 10. Okay. I want to make this look a little bit nicer though, so I think we're going to have a font color, which it can stay as black. I do want to have a font outline. I think we're going to make that white. And then let's go to our constants and let's go to the outline size and let's just give it a 1. So let's see what that looks like now. All right, it's not the most beautiful inventory, but we can always come back and tweak it. This will just give a more clear indication of what this is going to look like. I think I'm actually just going to flip this. I think I want white on this and then the outline color to be black. I think that might look a little bit better. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. All right, so now let's move on to our inventory slot script. We're not going to need a process, and we are going to need our ready, but first we're going to need onReady variables for these three things right now. We're going to have another onReady variable for what we're going to call our normal texture, which we're just going to default to the texture. Then we're going to have an export variable for selected texture, which is an atlas texture. And then two regular variables, one for the slot index, which is an integer. We'll have it default to 0. And then we're going to have a pending slot index, which is an integer and will be -1. Okay, inside of our ready, let's first check if the pending slot index doesn't equal -1. So if we have a valid slot index, we're going to get the slot index.text. We're going to get a string of our pending slot index +1. Slot index is going to equal the pending slot index, else slot number dot text is equal to our string slot index +1. And this slot index up here should actually be our slot number, just like in the else. So we are setting which slot in our hotkey we're actually going to be dynamically displaying or programmatically displaying in our inventory slots. So when we have 4 slots, we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4. Lastly, outside of this if else, we're going to get our quantity label text and just default it to empty. And then the quantity label visible equal to false, since we don't want this to be visible or have anything until we're actually holding items. So now we want to set item, which will take an item, just a type of item, a quantity, which is an integer. It's not going to return anything. And we're going to get our item icon, get the texture and assign it to the item.icon. We're going to get the item icon and change the visibility to true so we can actually see it. And we get our quantity label .text, and it's going to be the string of the quantity if we have a quantity, else it will just be an empty string. Oh, sorry, no, if quantity is greater than 1, right? Because we want to only be displaying the quantities if we are greater than 1. If we have 1 of anything, we just don't want to show it. We don't want to show the quantity text, at least. And then we're going to get the quantity label, and we have to set its visibility, which will be equal to our quantity greater than 1. So true if it's greater than 1. Then we're going to do a clear method, which what we're going to do here is get our item icon, texture, set it to null. We're going to get our item icon's visibility, set it to false, and then the quantity label visibility and set it to false. So whenever we're getting rid of an item, we're just going to reset that slot. Then we're going to get set slot index, which takes in an index, which is an integer. We don't return anything. And we're going to do if not is node ready, pending slot index equals index, and then we return. Otherwise, the slot index is equal to the index, and the slot number dot index or dot text, sorry, is equal to the string of index +1. And the last method we're going to need in here is going to be what we're going to call is set selected, which is going to take in a bool, which we're going to call selected. Won't return anything, but we're just going to set the texture equal to selected texture if selected, else normal texture. All right, so now that we have our inventory slots set up, we need to actually create our inventory bar. So let's create a new scene. We're going to make this a canvas layer. We'll call it our inventory bar. Let's save that into our inventory folder. We will also attach a script to this. But let's again focus on the 2D side of things for right now. Layer, I'm just going to bump this up to 5 so it will show over things. We don't want it to get hidden behind any of our other, tile maps or anything like that. So we're just going to bump this up a little bit. And then we're going to add a control. We're going to set this to the bottom wide right here. So it's going to be the entire length. We're going to go to the mouse, put the filter on ignore, and then we're going to add an hbox container in here. And we want this to be on the bottom center. I think the layout should be fine right now. We're not going to have any theme overrides. We're not going to do. We want these boxes to be right up against each other. And then we're going to add another hbox container in here, which we're going to call our slots. And that will be good. So now we're going to go to the script, which is going to be kind of the bulk of our code for this whole thing. And we're going to dynamically be adding in our inventory slots into our inventory bar. So let's go into the script. And the first thing we're going to do, let's get this on ready for our slots. We're going to need a constant for our slot scene, which we want to preload. And it will be our inventory slot scene file. We're going to have a variable for inventory, which will be of the type inventory, and then the selected slot will be an integer, and we default to -1. We are going to need our ready method, but not the process. And in our ready, we need to find the inventory. So we have the inventory inside of our character. And this inventory bar, this inventory stuff is going to be inside of our character. So what we want to do in this inventory bar, we need to basically go to the owner and then find the inventory node. So we're going to get node. We're going to do 2 dots to go back to basically our character base scene. And then we're going to get the inventory node. If we have an inventory, we're going to get the inventory. Get the inventory changed signal, connect to it, and then on inventory changed, we're also going to create slots, which is a method that we are going to be creating throughout this script. So we want to pass in the inventory and the max slots. So let's go to our inventory. Right now, our max slots is 10. I think that's going to be a little too much. I'm going to default this back down to 4 right now. Back in the inventory bar script, we want to do an else, and then we can just have a print statement here where we're just going to do no inventory found, which is something we don't want. We may want to create a way where we can, if there's no inventory node on our character, we create it for it and assign the inventory script to it. But for right now, we're just going to assume that we're going to have this inventory node on our character. So let's just create the placeholder methods for everything else that we're going to need. So we're going to need our create slots method, which takes in a count, which is an integer, and it will not return anything. We are going to have an input method, which is the godot built in. It's going to check for the input event. It will not return anything. We're going to have a select slot method, which takes in the index of the slot that we are going to be selecting. It will not return anything either. We're going to have use selected item. This will not return anything either. And then lastly, we are going to have the on inventory changed method, which does not return anything either. So in our create slots, we need to actually go and instantiate each of these slots so they will appear inside of our hotbar. So we're going to do for I in range of our count, which will ultimately be the max number of slots that is assigned. We're going to create a slot, which is going to be our slot scene. We're going to instantiate it. Slot, we're going to set slot index and then give it the I, and then slots, add child, and we're going to give it our slot. This is where we're going to handle whether we're selecting our slot based on our hotkeys. So we're going to do if event.isPressed for I in range of 4, if input.isKeyPressed, and we're going to do key 1 plus the index. So if we're pressing 1, the index in this range is going to be 0, so we will ultimately be getting key 1. We're going to select a slot, give it the index, and we're going to get viewport, set input as handled. Should be select slot, not selected slot. And then outside of this if, we also want, I'm going to set it up so that we can use an item when we right click. So we're going to do if event dot is action pressed. We're going to call this use item. And we also need to check if our selected slot doesn't equal -1, then we can use our selected item. And for us to actually have this use item here, let's, before we forget, go into our project settings, the input map, and let's create use item. And like I said, I'm just going to make this on our right mouse button. In select slot, we check if the index is equal to the selected slot. Selected slot is going to equal -1, else the selected slot will be equal to our index. Then we need to do another loop. So for I in range of our slots.get child count, and we get a variable for our slot, slots.get child at the index of I. Then we do slot.set selected, and then we do I equals selected, or double equals, so we're checking if this is true or false. I forgot the in here. Okay, that will get rid of that error. In use selected item, we're going to if selected slot is greater than or equal to 0, and our selected slot is less than the inventory dot items dot size. We're going to get our item data equal to the inventory dot items at the selected slot. And then if we have item data and an item, we're going to attempt to use the item. So we're going to get our character again. Will be type character, and this will just be the owner as character. So let's do as character. We're not going to do it that way. So I want to make sure that we get our type hints. So if character and our item data dot item dot use, pass in the character. If item data dot quantity is greater than 1, item data dot quantity minus equals 1. So if we're using one of our items, we have to subtract from the quantity that we're actually using it. Otherwise, item data dot item equals null. So we want to clear out this item if we've used the last one. Quantity to 0. After this, we go out of this if else, but we still want to be inside of this if right here. We're going to do our inventory changed signal. So we have to go inventory changed. Let's emit that, and then selected slot, and we give it the selected slot. Sorry, it should be select slot, and then selected slot. Then we need to add an if or an else statement outside of this here. So let's go outside of there, add the else, and then we're just going to add a print here. Just gives us a failed to use item. So we just want to know if there's something going on with us where we can't actually use our items. Now on inventory changed, we're going to do another for loop. So for I in range of our inventory dot items size, we need to get our slot. So we're going to do our slots dot get child again on the index. We need to get our item data, which is going to be equal to our inventory dot items at the I. And then if item data dot item, we're going to set the item. So slot dot set item at the item data item and the item data quantity. Else we slot dot clear. All right, so that should wrap up our script here. But we do need to go back to our character. And as I mentioned, we need to actually add the inventory bar to our character scene. So let's go into the inventory and let's grab the inventory bar. Just going to drag it. It can go on the bottom here. Now, if we go into the 2D scene, our test level, let's actually go. See, we're getting errors. Nope. Okay, let's try this out. All right, so we're here. The sizing is wonky. Oh gosh, I called it set. Whoops. All right, well, let's just see if we can get this up and running, and then we'll work on the sizing. Oh, okay, here it is. I had a typo in slot.item. Put items instead of item. Okay, all right, we have it. Let's see if we can actually use it. It looks disgusting right now. And then when I hit right click, we need to select the slot, which is nice. So we have selected. I don't have a texture, which is good. And then I right click, it says failed to use item. And that is going to be because we didn't set the health amount. So let's go fix all this stuff. So let's go into our inventory slot. In the inventory slot, we want to go into the selected texture. Let's create a new one. And we're going to use the same tile map here. We're going to edit the region. And as I mentioned, we are going to use the one right next to the one that we were using. Okay. And now we need to fix the size weirdness. Let's get rid of this custom minimum size. We don't want to scale either. We want to keep the aspect centered. There we go. Okay, these we have to reset these, but this looks a lot better. That also is not scaling inside of there. So let's go back to our inventory slot. We have the item icon here. Slots should be slot.item.id equal to the item ID we're passing in. I think what was happening here was this transform got set to 40 by 40 somehow. So this made our sizing and placement look really, really off. So that's why this item icon was all the way over here. I have no idea how that happened. But let's just reset the position here, and we're gonna do what we were doing before. Have it go one in. I think now this font looks big. I think we're gonna move this font down in size. Maybe 8, make it a little bit bigger. Let's just reset all of these size and positions. Anything else that I've done, let's just reset this. We are going to just put this in the dead center, and we're going to make this 8 by 8. Drag it right there. Okay, so there's got to be something wrong. Yeah, now the inventory bar. Box container. And the slots. Let's just make sure these are on the bottom. In the item icon, then we need to do the keep aspect centered. Oh, we want to also fit width proportional. There we go. Now we're in, and when I hit 1, this is selecting. You can kind of see we're selected, and that's going to be the only way that I can use my potion. So let's go back to the test level, and inside of the item pickup, we need to go back in here and select the heal amount. So I'm going to make this 20. Let's make sure we have our 1 slot selected. We'll take some damage, and then I right click and my health goes back to normal. Okay, so sorry for the little bit of debugging that we had to do here, but in the next video, we're going to work on improving our inventory bar, where we're going to allow us to drag and drop items so that you can reorganize your input. And then I'd like to also implement a full inventory view, so when the user presses tab, they can see every single item that they're holding, but only the 4 that they have in the hotbar are the ones that they can use via a hotkey, so sort of like a backpack feature.